somebody that wants professional quality, but not at the cost of what Intel was offering with the i7-6900K, the i7-6850K, and the i7-6800K, which I have with me today. And I also have the full Ryzen lineup, the Ryzen denoting that mainstream 2 prosumer, 7 denoting enthusiast, and that X denoting high performance and XFR. So the flagship that I have in this Ryzen build right now sets you back $499. So pretty enthusiast grade stuff right there. Let's quit wasting time, guys, and get right into this video. So diving right into this mainstream 2 prosumer build. That's professional quality, professional performance. That's right, the flagship Ryzen 7 1800X clocked at 3.6 gigahertz, overclocked quite easily out of the box to over 4 gigahertz with the Sense MI technologies that AMD has invested a lot. So let's talk about the installation process. Well, the motherboard is absolutely amazing. So the motherboard, of course, is on the new AM4 platform to have compatibility with these new Ryzen CPUs. This is the MSI X370 Titanium. Retails for $200,000. This is actually by far the best board I've seen that has personal experience. The features are just so abundant. It supports up to 64 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM, has connectivity galore with USB 3.1 Gen 2, an included Turbo M.2 with an M.2 shield, Turbo U2, and all this with steel armor to make everything very securely in place. Supports up to 2-way SLI or leeway crossfire. The quality exceptional, and installing the CPU is pretty straightforward and simple. Just lift the retention arm up, then grab your chip, not touching, of course, any of the pins on the bottom top surface of the chip. So holding it from the side, look at the arrow that it has in one of the corners and line that up with the corresponding dot on the motherboard, then gently set it into place. After that, just lower the back down and lock into place in the socket. And moving it on now to the cooler, this one was actually included with the AMD review kit from Noctua, a dedicated special edition for AMD's AM4 socket, sets you back just $65. This is the NH-U12SE AM4. It's premium grade, has a copper base and heat pipes, aluminum cooling fins. It's the perfect size, really slim, and at just 158 millimeters in height, it goes perfect with almost all mid-height and above cases. And it's really nice to see cooler support from all sorts of different manufacturers coming in droves right now. Just be sure with whatever cooler you go with, it fits socket AM4 and you're good to go. And conveniently, there's some high-end NT H1 thermal paste in the box, which I use to apply just a few sizes around onto the socket. So this is definitely professional grade solution, provides minimal thermal resistance, and it's really outstanding. Now the cooler came out of the box as easy to install as literally lining it up with the holes and just tightening the screws down on each side. You can then attach the included fan, which is typically beige and light brown in Noctua fashion. This one's a black variant, no biggie, it's pretty cool. So by using the provided thin clips, just latch them around the edges of the fan and then move them forward to grasp within the fins of the cooler for extra snugness. Now grab the CPU fan cable and plug it into the CPU fan connector that's right above. It's labeled on the motherboard towards the top. So let's move it all along now to the random access memory. This has official support for Ryzen. This is two 8GB sticks of DDR4 Corsair Vengeance LPX RAM at 3000 megahertz for a total of 16 gigabytes in dual channel, setting you back $129. So to install, just open the retention levers on the memory module slots in DIMMs 2 and 4, because that's what this motherboard manual indicates the configuration needed for dual channel. Now just holding the RAM, line that indentation up of the memory in the track, press down so the levers snap back into place. You'll hear two very distinct snaps for a total of 4 snaps for both memory modules. Now let's take our attention to the case. Don't forget to install the I/O shield. So just go to the back of the case, look for that rectangular hole, line it up, keyboard hole up top, speakers on the bottom, and apply pressure from within until it snaps into place. This is an easy one to forget, so don't start installing your motherboard without putting that I/O shield first. Thank you later. Okay, so now let's put that motherboard within the case. We're rocking the NZXT SD44 Elite case today. So installing that new motherboard, there's 9 mounting holes in the NZXT case. One of them is actually a raised standoff, so you don't need a screw for that. It goes in the center mounting hole of your motherboard and helps secure the board while you're installing. So what's great about upgrading is you don't always have to start the build completely over. So I actually have left my power supply in, my storage drives already installed with SATA data and SATA power cables already connected. So just be sure if you're leaving any components inside, if you are doing an upgrade, move all the SATA cables, the front USB 3 cable, the front umbilicals out of the way. You don't want your motherboard going on top of these during the installation. And that all said, just line up the mounting holes on the motherboard with the standoffs in the case. Usually make sure there's no stray standoffs or no extra standoffs depending on your case that could potentially damage your motherboard, short your motherboard if there's a stray. Then use the provided 5mm screws that come with your case to secure the motherboard into place. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're good to go. And for storage up front in the SSD caddy, none other than a great value from P&Y, a 480GB solid state drive, excellent sequential read and write speeds, and just sets you back $137. That's for 480GB. Looks really clean up in the front of the NZXT case. And for the power supply, I went with one from EVGA for just $99. This is the EVGA Platinum Certified P2 power supply. Has a 140mm silent fan with double ball bearings, so very long lifespan, warranty, rated what cables you want, what cables you don't want. I really appreciate that with this power supply. And we are well past the halfway point already, guys. Let's get into the wiring. That's a little bit of the tedious part. So grab the front umbilicals. That's the 4 tiny connections on those wires. And look for the pins right above the label JFP1 underneath. Grab the 4 wires with the tiny connectors to connect hard disk drive LED, power LED, and now it's also a really good time to connect the large motherboard connectors. You got the huge 24-pin connector with a clip on one side. You can't totally miss this all. Snaps right into place on the right middle side of the motherboard. Really quick into place. So let's move it on along now to the graphics card from MSI, the GTX 1070 Gaming X. This red dragon looks beastly, has RGB lighting, has some red, looks like fire on the side. Really cool looking backplate. Installation is really easy, and this GPU only sets you back $415. So to install it, just look to the highest PCI Express slot. There's steel armor, so it's going to hold it very securely into place. Now don't forget, guys, you've got to give power to that graphics card. So route the power cables. They're actually labeled PCI-E. That's the PCI-E power cable. You need a 6-pin, and you can combine a 6-pin, 2-pin, and 8-pin. A total of 14 pins, and they snap right into place. And applying a little bit of pressure to the connectors, snap right into place. So now put the side panel the SD back on. Tempered glass. How amazing does that look? You are just about ready to boot up your new 8-4 Ryzen PC for the very first time. And now your epic workstation battle station is ready to take on the world. Just get the power cable plugged into the power supply, boot it up as usual. And I've had some time on this beast. So let me bring you guys my preliminary benchmarks in the applications that I use a lot, as well as some synthetic benchmarks, and also, of course, in games that I like to play a lot in the titles. So let's start it off now with something we're all familiar with. So in 3D Mark Fire Strike Ultra, the 6700K with a score of 4,532, and the 1800X with a score of 4,586. And for more synthetic testing, Cinebench R15 that is going to take advantage of all that computational prowess of the 1800X. And of course, the score really blew away the 6700K at 1600. Moving on along now to the very real world application, and that's going to be in rendering and exporting. More specifically in Adobe Premiere, I know the Adobe applications are very popular, and somebody who has a productivity setup or a workstation is more than likely going to be using something from the Adobe lineup, and the results were very pleasing. It took my old Intel system 39% longer to render the same video, and the results also very pleasing for video exporting. The Ryzen 7 1800X system is much faster. Let's move it on now to gaming, because you know I love the game. So I have a 4K display. I usually have it at 1440p because I'm rocking the GTX 1070, and that's really the sweet spot for the 1070. And these are mostly in-game benchmarks, since I wanted to remove the chance of human error. So Batman Arkham Knight in-game bench, high settings, results are pretty similar. Shadow of Mordor 1440p Ultra, the in-game benchmark. Again, results very similar. Rise of the Tomb Raider 1440p, very high. Anti-aliasing 16x. This is in the geothermal valley. So this was with DirectX 12. What's significant here is that the minimum FPS on the Ryzen 7 1800X system was a bit higher. And now for Witcher 3 1440p Ultra, hair works on the Division at 1440p Ultra settings, in-game benchmark. And that's all I got for this video, guys. You let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Ryzen 7 being AMD's flagship enthusiast chip, and has AMD sort of disrupted the market, created a whole category for us what was previously quite expensive on professional multi-threads like you could in an i7 6900K until now for half the cost. So this is excellent for the prosumer. So whether you want workstation, battle station, encoding, rendering, what I think it's great for is all of the above, everything, all the stuff, and it's lots of computation. The computational power from the multi-thread is very clear. I think we're only at the very beginning of game developers really turning their attention towards these very high threads. Because in the past, who's buying an i7 6900K to game on? It's obviously going to be for work and other applications that are really going to take advantage of multi-thread. And up until now, twice the amount of people buy CPUs under $300 and 99% under $500. So that left the market for 16 threads, 12 threads, pretty niche, and not really going to get the attention of game developers, software developers until it's actually becoming mainstream. And that's where AMD is innovative. It's ahead of its time, pushing us further into the multi-thread era, which is going to be great for us in the long run because you see how quickly NVIDIA graphics, AMD Radeon graphics are having insane leaps year after year. I don't know if 4-core 8-thread is really going to cut it for much longer. Think about it. GTX 970, GTX 670 on 50% gain. Then you have the same time period, i7 4790K, i7 7700K on 10% gain. So you don't need to be a wizard with compound interest math to see at that rate, 4 cores, 8 threads is not going to cut it for long, and allowing developers to focus their attention by making this market segment so accessible by everybody. It's just going to be great for everybody in the long run. Better overall performance, gaming, less bottlenecks. Once the optimization is really fine-tuned by the developers, by this new creation, the accessibility of chips have performance that previously was way out of our hands with Intel's pricing structure. Now it's in our hands, it's in our grasp, and this is the future of AMD. Thumbs up if you like this video, off that subscribe.
Killing spree. Glorious. Soon the shrines shall awaken, heroes.
Well done.
The shrines are gathering power. The Dragon Knight calls from the dead. Enemy slain. Your killing spree has ended. Killing spree. Free the Dragon Knight and slaughter your enemies.
Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to another video in the studio. Today we're talking about PC fans, as this is something I've wanted to talk about for a while. There are loads of new fans coming out. Corsair have released their ML series, and this is their ML Pro for magnetic levitation fans, and they market them as these high-end premium fans, but do they actually make any difference to your PC? And of course, it's not just Corsair. You've got a wide selection of fans. You've got Beefire selection of silence optimized fans. You've got Noctua going for a very premium end of the market. And is it actually worth investing in fans? Is it worth exploring getting better fans, or should you just not care about them at all? Well, before we can answer that, we need to actually look at what fans do. And obviously they cool your PC. They sit on your case and they bring cool air in and exhaust hot air out. And depending on the way you configured your case, you're probably bringing cool air in from the bottom and then venting it up the top, as this is in theory the most efficient way of doing this, as heat naturally rises. And of course, the more fans that you have in your PC, then the more air will be moved from place to place. But depending on the case, this isn't always the case, as some cases are restricted, and depending on the cable management you do, and all of these things, they all play an important factor on your case, and thus on fans cooling in your case. Now, the different sorts of fans are pretty simple. You've got different sizes, the most common being 120mm and 140mm. If you go for a radiator in a water cooling setup, then these can be larger. You can have a 280mm rad, you can have a 360mm rad, and there's all these different combinations. But fans themselves, they have two different sorts of varieties. Airflow fans and then static pressure optimized fans. Airflow fans are all about pushing the most air possible from one place to the next. They're all about high volume, high speed, just getting air from A to B. These work best in places that are unrestricted. So, as an exhaust on your case is a good example of this, as you've probably not got anything blocking that fan, and it can literally chuck all of the air out from your case inside to the air outside. Static pressure fans, on the other hand, are optimized for static pressure, so the amount of pressure that these fans can actually push through the fan. And these are the most optimized for cases or areas within your case that are directly blocked. So if you have a case fan block, if you have a flip, for example, or if you have any sort of case where you've got a front grill and then you've got a fan in front of it and then they sort of bring the air in from the outside, then these are going to be where you want to use fans. And more cases are doing this, so just to name a few, you've got Corsair's 600C, you've got Fantech's P400S, and then of course their Evolve ATX, and just loads of cases. Pretty much all premium cases these days are going for that design, rather than the old school way of putting mesh in front of the case and then just bringing a large amount of cooling and air into your PC. But of course, fans aren't all made equal, yet varying quality of fans are made for cheap, and some are made for more the luxury side of things. And the sort of fans you've got at the moment probably depends on the case you bought. If you buy a cheap case, you're probably going to get some cheap, nasty fans, and you're not going to get very many. But if you step up and you buy a premium case, then you are going to get better quality fans. But the best quality fans are normally reserved for the people that want to go out and buy a premium fan. And the ones that will kick off this video are these ones here, not these ones, these are the stock ones, but these, which are Corsair's ML120 Pro or 140 Pro LED, depending on the range you go for. These are magnetic levitation fans, and the bearing that's actually in the middle of these are an electromagnet, and then when the fan spins round, it essentially gives you less friction and you get lower noise. Because if you look at a fan, then you will notice that the centre of the fan, there is a bearing in here. You can't really see it, but depending on the quality of this bearing, the longer the fan will last and the amount of noise that you'll get from the fan. And the motor within the fan also makes a big amount of difference, and the design of the fan, and all of these things add up to a fan that can make a large amount of noise or a small amount of noise. And then depending on the way you mount it, and then again depending on the quality of the fan, you can get a large amount of vibration going into your case, which is almost annoying the noise itself, because it just makes this horrible rattling noise. It's not as bad as hard drives, but it's definitely something to consider if you're getting rattle from your case. It might be worth looking at mounting your fans differently or getting some higher quality fans. So it should come as no surprise that spending more money on a fan is going to give you better performance. But performance, what does that actually mean? Well, you're going to get better cooling performance because you're going to move a larger amount of air, and it's going to do it more quietly, so you're going to have a quieter running system. Both of those things, whether it makes that much difference and whether you're actually going to see a performance increase in your PC, probably not. But the quiet element for me is very important. But there is of course the aesthetic element, as if you go for a fan that has LEDs, then you are going to get some extra visual effects in your PC. You can also get fans now going forward that have RGB compatibility, so you can have cool fans. Some of them absolutely stupid, some of them are a little bit more tame, and you might actually be able to get a system that looks a little bit unique. But the most important thing isn't really the fans you have themselves. I would definitely say there are such things as crap fans, and if you buy a really cheap, nasty case, you're definitely going to get crap fans. So if you do have a case with crap fans, you'll be looking at upgrading them. But it doesn't matter what fan you have. The most important thing that I would say is that you want to get these 4 fans, these 4 fans can actually be customized with their fan speed. You can plug them in the fan controller on your case. But the thing I would always recommend doing is getting a motherboard that has motherboard fan speed control. And this means that you can now actually plug your fan into your motherboard, header goes onto the fan headers, and then your system will then automatically decide the amount of fan speed that you need depending on the situation. As there is nothing worse than trying to watch a Blu-ray movie on your PC and having fans running at full blast. These days there is no point in having your fans directly connected to a Molex connector or just having them running at full speed. Even under max load, it's very rare that you're going to need to do this unless you are rendering a video and everything is getting very toasty. But it's not just motherboards that have this functionality, as you can also grab something like this, which is the RX 460. It's the Strix edition, and it actually has some fan headers on the GPU as well. This is a fairly new feature that is coming into some graphics cards. I know all of the Strix graphics cards have them, I'm not sure if any others have them, but now you can actually change your fan speed depending on your GPU temperature, and your GPU will decide it rather than your motherboard, which is pretty cool. But regardless of whether you go for something like this or whether you plug them into your motherboard, the system itself is fairly easy to use. You just need to grab some software. The one I'm showing you here is the Asus AI suites, where automatically at the touch of a button you can press configure your fans, optimize your fans, and it will then run all your fans independently and find the best fan speed and set a fan curve. But you can then go in and customize your fan curve, so if you want your system to run a little bit hotter and a little bit quieter, you can do that. Or if you don't mind the noise, you can have your fans running at a higher speed. But the important thing is the curve, because the curve is going to have your fan